Good afternoon to one and all, and welcome to another exciting edition of Live at the Waterhole, here with Wild Earth TV. My name is Liam Burrow. I'm the naturalist that's going to be chatting you through a couple of, hopefully, wild scenes around some of Africa's most spectacular waterholes in some pretty wonderful wildlife destinations. But before we get too carried away with all that, I'd like to remind you that we do like to keep these shows as interactive as possible. So please keep your questions, comments, thoughts, come to the show. We will be standing by for the next 2 hours, hoping to hear from you. But what a fantastic way to kick off our afternoon here now at Rosie's Pan in Olifants West Game Reserve, which is located in the Greater Kruger, just outside the town of Piet in South Africa's Limpopo province. Looks like a nice sort of sub-adult male elephant here. Not an enormous bull, but I guess it's all relative. It's still probably a 4 or 5 ton animal. And quite a nice warm sunny day across much of the Lowveld this afternoon, so this guy is capitalizing on the opportunity to splash that very wrinkly skin with a bit of protective and cooling mud. Isn't that trunk just the most fantastic thing? And notice how this guy is sort of siphoning the only the very, very, very surface of the water there. Now, when it comes to actually drinking, elephants can be quite particular. He certainly doesn't want the murky, muddy stuff from below that he's stirred up while he's been trying to put mud all over himself. So when he is trying to drink, he just takes the very freshest, clearest stuff right off of the surface, quite skillfully. Ramon Nava, thank you very much for your comment, and hello to you too, and I hope you're also in for a good Sunday. Nice to have you with us here at Live at the Waterhole. And stick around, let's see what else is out there. Now, it's highly unlikely that this bull is completely alone. Elephants are very, very sociable animals. And while we often see the cows in those very well-structured social groups, breeding herds, bulls as well gravitate towards one another. So there's every chance that this guy is not here. Elephants do, of course, have the ability to communicate over quite vast distances using ultrasonic frequencies, so frequencies simply too low to be perceived in most cases by the human ear. So even if he can't see the other members of his bachelor group, they may be spread over a number of kilometers, they will still be in touch. Christoph has asked, can elephants get anthrax? Absolutely, Christoph. So it hasn't happened in any of the areas where I have guided or taken people on safari in the last 12 years. But certainly there are rare and occasional outbreaks of anthrax in the wild in Africa. It seems to hit elephants particularly hard. Elephants, hippos, buffalo. For anybody who doesn't know, anthrax is a pretty devastating thing. Obviously, you may have heard about it. It's used biological weapon, kind of used by bioterrorists. I think there were issues with it in the US, maybe somewhere in the mid 2000s, with it being sort of put in envelopes and sent to people and that sort of thing. But it occurs naturally in the wild in Africa. It can lay dormant for years and years and years, but under the right conditions, and I'm just that. It's not really my area of expertise, but it seems to come alive again, and it spreads pretty brutally. So the last outbreak I heard about, it was in Zambia. It killed a couple of hundred hippos, certainly a few hundred elephants, before it just sort of faded away again. Yeah, pretty nasty stuff. Alrighty, it does look like our elephant bull has vacated here. We might have a little bit of a see if there's anything here. Alrighty, well, I think in the interest of keeping things moving, in the absence of our big elephant here at Rosie's Pan, let's head up to one of my absolute favorite locations here at Live at the Waterhole, and that Old Donyo in Kenya. Very, very nice. A magnificent male impala stood in the drizzling rain, Old Donyo. And what a spectacular specimen he is. Some of the biggest impala in the world we found in Kenya. And such is true of many different species, certainly buffalo and elephants. Now, we're not 100% sure why that is, but it's possibly to do with the mineral-rich soils across much of East Africa. Historically, and we're talking ancient history here, much of East Africa was very, very volcanic. And there's still the remnants of a couple of active volcanoes around, but the result of millions of years of volcanic eruptions. Many of these areas were showered with volcanic ash, and that volcanic ash is very, very rich in calcium, phosphorus, all sorts of essential minerals for building very, very big animals. So we do tend to see elephants with the very largest of tusks, the biggest horns possible on impala, kudu, etc. Yeah, that is a very, very good ram. Wonderful to see. And Kenya is experiencing some pretty spectacular rains at the moment. A relief after some very dry years.
Fancy playing safari snaps? Or showing off your photo skills in fun competitions? How about sneak peeks of our brand new camera spots and live chats with fellow Africam fans? Well, Africam All Access has got your back. Just head to Africam's YouTube channel, hit the join button and select Africam All Access. You'll unlock Africam premium website perks and all the VIP benefits of our YouTube memberships.
Doesn't look like this guy is about predators today, though. He's just taking some time out, standing nice and still in this rain. And as you can see, chewing away there, they're much like a goat or a sheep or a cow, and they are a ruminant, so they have a four-chambered stomach. And whenever they stop for a bit or lie down for a rest, you see them regurgitating the contents of one of those stomachs back up into their mouth, chewing it up again, and back down it goes. And that process will happen a number of leading the grass and the browse that they do feed on to be very, very well processed. It's quite an efficient system. Far more efficient than the system of something like an elephant, a hind gut fermenter. And as a result, these impala don't have to spend nearly as much time actually eating in comparison to something like the ellies. Yeah, certainly not much other movement here around the waterhole at Aldonyo today. And that is almost certainly to do with this rain. I also mentioned that this Aldonyo area and much of Kenya has experienced very, very, very good rainfall in weeks. And the effect of that will be lots of kind of ephemeral pans, very seasonal pans out in the bush. So many animals, elephants, antelope, giraffe, that would usually be visiting this waterhole regularly, now don't have to come in. They've got sources of water spread out across the ecosystem. It is a time of plenty. Jesse, good afternoon, and thanks very much for your question. Jesse has asked Dr. Ireland, so we experience a rut in the summer months in Africa, where impala rams are triggered by an increase in exposure to sunlight and have just an explosion of testosterone in their bodies, and that encourages them to run around quite spectacularly, and they do this really unbelievable, like belching, burping, growling sound. And they fight each other, try and establish dominance, and essentially, ultimately, hope to gain control of one of the breeding herds, a nice group of females. And for a particularly dominant male, that might be 100 individuals. But then he has the somewhat unenviable task of having to mate with all of those females in just the space of a few short days. And unfortunately for that ram, it will probably be a fatal experience for him. And the males are so focused on leaving behind a genetic legacy in the pregnancies of those females that they stop grooming themselves, they stop eating, and they're also so distracted, many of them stop watching out for predators. So when you are out on safari in the peak rut, you see loads of predators on adult male impala kills. I think that's probably the thing I enjoy about the rut. Yeah, certainly spending time in the Sabi Sands over those peak rutting periods, pretty much every leopard we view is feeding on an impala rat. Spectacular stuff. Yeah, and it is perhaps almost an inbuilt natural mechanism to prevent kind of stagnation of the genetics in a population, that one male doesn't get to mate with all of the females. So the fact that he dies kind of before finishing the job, giving another ram the chance to father some of those offspring, it keeps the genetic pool nice and deep. Marie, thank you very much, and hello to you in Belgium. Wonderful to have you joining us here live at the Waterhole. And certainly, I think bringing a little bit of wildlife into your home, especially these kind of live and unscripted type feeds, has immense value for a lot of people. Certainly the highlight of my day. Nice to spend some time in nature, if you can't actually get out into nature. Doing a little bit of grooming there. This impala ram doesn't have any teeth in his upper jaw, and when it comes to grinding food, and the teeth in the lower jaw kind of rub up against a sort of a tough leathery plate in the upper jaw. But he does have a set of fairly unusual pivoting comb teeth in his lower jaw. So when it comes time to grooming his fur, and as the name suggests, those teeth kind of comb through it, pivoting in their little sockets. and ultimately removing gas and fleas and old scabs, loose hair, that sort of thing. And as a result, the impala has really, really stunning soft fur. It's always in perfect shape. Jenna has asked quite an interesting question, and thanks for that, Jenna. Jenna has asked, do impala males age out of participating in the rut? Jenna, I think, to be perfectly honest with you, most of them don't survive long enough to kind of retire. It is possible, and certainly on odd occasions I've seen really ancient-looking males with kind of worn-down tips to their horns. But you'd only really expect that in an area where perhaps the density of predators is not that great. Most impala males in the wild hit the rut and can participate in the rut for the first time at about 4 years of age. It's highly unlikely that I'd say 80 to 90% of those rams will be around for year 5 or year 6. It's a tough life out there. A nice superb starling hopping along the ground there, almost hoping to catch some bugs brought out by the rain. It's an East African species. Yeah, aptly named, the superb starling. No sign of any of those East African rock agamas, those very colourful lizards on the rocks around, but we do see them here occasionally. I think in today's rain with conditions quite cool, reptile activity is at a minimum here at Old. But when the sun pops out, and I'm sure it will, any of those ectothermic or cold-blooded creatures will have the chance to emerge and do some basking.
We have an exciting announcement. Wild Earth is launching a YouTube membership program. For a nominal monthly fee, members get an ad-free channel, prioritized questions, early access to videos, and many more perks. You'll get fun features like badges and emojis that'll make you stand out in the chat. YouTube memberships will help us to continue with our mission of connecting people with nature while giving you access to lots of our amazing content.
Here in recent, also two in this group that have radio collars, so we'll keep an eye out for them. Seeing a number of impressive, not enormous, but certainly very impressive sets of tusks. And as I just mentioned, a bit like you or me and our phenotypes, our physical characteristics, is determined by our genetics, whether we have brown hair, yellow teeth, blue eyes, brown skin, whatever the deal may be. Beautiful. These guys coming down for their afternoon drink. And those tusks keep growing throughout that elephant's life, and it only gets one set. And should it break one of them off, that tusk will continue to grow, but it will never regrow. It's not like the antler of a deer or a moose from the northern hemisphere, which is regenerated once for rainfall this year. I believe it's got a bit, but it certainly has been a little bit disappointing. Hence the eye-looking scene behind the zebra. Actually, some grass did grow, and rain seems to still be coming dribs and drabs. So we may just be lucky and get some lovely offset rain this wet season. If we don't, it's going to be a very bleak situation out there. Yeah, a lot of people think that the sort of main disaster in a drought is the fact that there isn't water available out in the bush. But the biggest issue in most cases is the fact that if rain doesn't arrive, plants don't grow. The grass doesn't survive. So that means for a very, very bleak dry season for the animals that depend. Just having a little pan around now. We'll see if we can see anything else. Maybe get a view of our crocodile residence. Certainly there's quite a bit of bird life around here at Tau. So often the case. I mentioned at Old Donyo that water is life. When we have a source of water in a place like Africa, a nice wild region, life congregates in droves. Ah, there we go. There's a big crocodile sort of lying on that lump of mud, doing a bit of basking, with a red bill just disappearing out of frame there. Sure, doesn't that look nice? The perfect spot for this reptile. So as mentioned in a couple of the earlier Live at the Waterholes shows, oh, there's his eye opening now, crocodiles are ectothermic. So in layman's terms, cold-blooded. Bubble has sent in a question, can Ellies sense if a visitor is scared? Bubba's mom, not sure if they can literally sense it, like an eighth or a ninth sense, but certainly pick up on kind of changes in your voice, your body language. So when we are out on safari and we do have the privilege of a group of elephants or maybe a single bull coming right up to the side of it, as a naturalist sign that it's going to come, just to sit, breath, relax. And I like to kind of keep talking in a nice, soft voice, which I think calms people and elephants at the same time. Yeah, they are, after all, extremely sentient, very perceptive animals. Daniel has asked, why do they stay still for so long, talking about this crocodile. So Daniel crocodile is out at the moment basking in the sun, as touched on a moment. They are ectothermic. So what that means is he requires an external source of heat energy in order to regulate his own body temperature. If conditions are cold and the sun didn't come out at all for weeks at a time, which would be very unusual in a place like Africa, but theoretically if it did, the crocodile's energy levels would be so low it just wouldn't be able to move. So these guys come out whenever they can, haul themselves up onto a riverbank or a sort of island in the mud like this, expose those bony scutes down their back to some nice sun and charge up their batteries a bit. As the crocodile heats up, it's going to go nice and yellow. So I think this guy's batteries are almost fully charged. Almost time to head off on the hunt.
This is On Safari. And now we get two species of crocodiles in Africa, the Nile croc that we're looking at the moment, and something called the slender-snouted crocodile in parts of equatorial Africa in the jungle. And that's a much these Nile crocs, being the larger of the two, can get up to a metric ton in weight, possibly more, and well over 15 foot long. Still quite surprisingly, they are not the largest species of crocodile in the world. That title is held by the salt crocodile found in parts of northern Australia and into some parts like Indonesia. They regularly get well over 20 feet long. And yeah, as we've seen in previous live at the waterhole shows, he's not alone here. There are at least two other crocs in the dam, or in the pan. But yeah, I was actually chatting to a viewer in yesterday's show
And we've never viewed young crocodiles here, so I doubt they've managed to successfully nest and hatch youngsters. For what exact reason, I can't be completely sure. Possibly the Earth is too compacted around this water source, or possibly the crocodiles are all one gender. They're all either female or male. Nice African spoonbill just at the edge of the water there. That quite pale looking bird with the long feet. As his name suggests, he's evolved spoon-shaped bill, which enables him to kind of separate through the layer on the bottom and pull out things like little mollusks, little clams, and crustacean, shrimps, crabs, fish. Very cute birds, absolute favorites. Alrighty, well, I think let's head back over to Old Donyo now, where I believe we have some more small things to look at. So back over at Old Donyo, it looks like the rain has stopped for now, and small life forms are starting to emerge. We're looking at a East African ground squirrel here. As his name suggests, this is a totally terrestrial species. They do not climb trees, and they live in burrows in the soil. A little bit like prairie dogs in Northern America. He's actually scanning through some elephant droppings at the moment. Ellies, as we know, are particularly drawn to fruiting trees out in the wild, but they've got a very weak digestive system, being mobbed by some sort of bird there. So yeah, many of the seeds contain pass undamaged through an elephant's digestive system. Given the opportunity, things like squirrels love to kind of cut and those seeds. Thankfully, the squirrels don't get all of the seeds. They couldn't possibly result in wonderful seed dispersers. Cass Harwoe has asked, do crocodiles have any predators? Cass, they absolutely do. So in the wild, crocodiles in particular, crocodiles in drought conditions, where they don't have the ability to kind of rush back to the safety of the water, are attacked by things like lions. I've even seen a leopard on a crocodile kill. So yeah, it certainly happens. And we're talking adult crocodiles as tiny little hatchlings, about 25 centimeters. They are fed on by loads of things, from waterbirds to large fish, mongooses, all sorts of things. A wonderful perspective on those impala legs, a squirrel's eye view. Looks like a number of impala, a couple of individuals doing a bit of jousting heads. Now these guys are mature yet, probably somewhere in the vicinity of 2 to 3 years old. You can see those tips of the horns still kind of point inwards. When a male is around 4 years old, as the male in the back there is, those tips point towards the sky, kind of bending outwards a bit more. So yeah, these guys will hopefully hang on if they're enough to survive another couple of years in this environment, which is full of danger, full of predators. They will kind of earn the opportunity to compete in the rut for the rights to mate with females. Erin has said the impalas here look so much healthier, and Erin, you've hit the nail right on the head. They absolutely do, and that is directly to the life-saving rains that have arrived in East Africa this year. Good rain, 3 or 4 of good green grass, and the herbivores make a phenomenal transformation. Very, very common antelope species in Africa, most prolific species on the continent. And as a result, unfortunately, I think they're very often overlooked. They're given sort of 2 or 3 minutes of interest on kind of the first day of the safari, and then people just sort of brush them off in pursuit of bigger, more interesting things, which is, I think, quite tragic. They are very, very interesting and undeniably beautiful. Questions and comments coming in very steadily, so thank you very much for that. Clara has asked, do the females have any duties during the rut? Not really, Clara, to be honest with you, other than perhaps just kind of acting as spectators, watching the males go ahead. Now again, and this is not really an even match. I think it's just practice for the male on the right. He's not to be taken seriously as a competitor. But this practice, a little bit like going to the gym for a professional athlete, will put him in good standing when his turn does come around. And I'm sure it's appreciated by the male at the back, the one that is actually an adult. And to have a sparring partner also helps to keep him in good condition.
We did have some lions. Cedric's probably going to follow that one.
So I'm not getting any from any of our feeds, unfortunately. I have to listen to the audio coming in from our director. But I'm presuming you've been hearing some of that belching that goes on when these males do lock horns. It is just the most bizarre sound. And certainly many people out on a safari for the first time would be forgiven for thinking it is the roar of a lion. Yeah, that was quite a serious battle. It's kind of ongoing, with these males locking horns and puffing out their white kind of unfur. All of them trying to establish dominance here around the water. And the ladies will be watching and listening, making decisions about which male is the most eligible to sire their offspring. And that is natural selection in a nutshell. The genes from only the fittest, the strongest, should survive. And that ensures species over thousands of years get stronger and stronger. But I mentioned in an earlier segment that we see a total spike of predation on these impala rams during this rut period, and you can understand it. Look at how much energy they're sort of focusing on chasing each other around. They also make so much more noise, so any hungry lion or leopard in the vicinity is drawn to this area. And as the males become weakened towards the end of the rut, the predators pick them off. But again, that gives a nice opportunity for multiple males to sire offspring. Nice and varied. Nice. Donovan has asked, can warm or cold changes in the season affect how a rut goes? And would global warming affect the rut at all? So, Donovan, my understanding is that the rut is to do with an increase in exposure to sunlight. So it is photosensitive. The system for the production of testosterone in the body of those male impalas is very, very sensitive to the sun. I think it's also encouraged by the arrival of the green grass. Maybe there are vitamins and minerals essential to that process. But certainly global warming could be a catastrophe for all manner of these sort of lesser processes in the natural world, processes that may well otherwise go completely unnoticed for us as humans. Yeah, even in terms of like the nesting of southern ground hornbills in parts of South Africa, they reckon an annual increase in temperature is causing absolute havoc with that. Southern ground hornbills, for anybody who doesn't know, a highly endangered, gigantic species of kind of terrestrial ground-walking hornbill. They are found out here as well. They nest in big hollows in trees and that sort of thing. But when the parents nest in the summertime and the temperature gets too hot in those nests, very often the parents have to jump off of that egg. They just cannot stand it in the tree. Far too warm in the nest itself. And very often when they jump off, something like vervet monkey spoon is predators jump in there and eat the eggs. Yeah, even for the nesting of things like reptiles, where incubation temperature is so critical for the development of the embryo, and that can be absolutely disastrous, killing entire generations. So climate change is certainly a worry. This four-tailed wide quite on the top of this acacia tree after all the rain, quite appropriately named straw-tailed for that lovely long tail there. There is strong sexual dimorphism between the sexes. What that means is a very visual difference between the male and the female. So the male is this quite spectacular peacock-type individual with very impressive plumage. The female is quite drab and quite plain. And essentially that all comes down to mate selection again. So theoretically, the healthier, the stronger, the more virile and the more dominant the male, and the better the feathers. So it's a very easy for us to choose the best mate. And quite fascinating, as are brood parasites, a bit flux. They don't do any incubation of their own eggs. So once a male is mated with a female, when she is ready to lay an egg, she will keep an eye out for like nesting waxbills, nesting firefinches, perhaps a weaver bird. She'll wait for the parents to be away. She'll pop into that nest and quickly drop off an egg. Sneaky but effective. Alrighty, well, speaking of birding, I think let's cross back into South Africa, see what's happening around the water at Rosie's Pack. Apologies, looks like it may have frozen there at Rosie's. We'll see if it stabilizes. We are, of course, working quite remotely. No, okay, no luck there. Yeah, certain technical difficulties come with the territory of trying to bring this program to you live from some pretty remote corners of African wilderness. But thankfully, we have somewhere to be. A nice look at bulls out in the grass here at Tembe once again. They look like they've finished up with their drinking. Possibly time for a bit of splashing or a bit of feeding. That trunk really is the most peculiar organ, isn't it? So it's made up of something like 25 or 30 radically constructed muscles. So muscles kind of are connected in a circular shape. And quite staggeringly, it'll take a young elephant up to an entire year to coordinate all of the synapses in the brain with that trunk. It takes ages to master it. And when it's fully functional, it's an impressive tool. Yeah, you might say that that trunk is the elephant equivalent to a pair of human hands. That elephant the ability to push over a 3 or 4 ton hardwood or kind of move a grain of sand out of the corner of its eye. So it has the full range of capabilities. And it also, of course, hosts probably, arguably, the finest sense of smell of any animal on Earth. Certainly many hundreds of times stronger than the finest drug-sniffing dogs. And that'll give elephants the ability to smell falling rain a couple of 100 miles away in certain parts of Africa. Janelle has asked, do elephant matriarchs have a strict selection process for mates? And Janelle, they absolutely do. Thanks very much for the time to send that question through. So female elephants can be very, very particular when it comes to selecting a mate. And essentially you can understand why. When she sort of has the biologic to have a bull fertilize an egg, it is the beginning of a journey that could arguably last a number of decades in her life. So she wants that calf to be strong and healthy and long. So she wants the very biggest, very strongest bull in the environment. It's also quite fascinating in many naturals with multiple generations of elephants living out their lives. Elephant females generally won't be choosing males less than the age of about 35 years. And keeping in mind, once again, elephant bulls hit puberty at the age of 18, so that is a lot of very frustrating years for sexually mature males. So the females prefer the really big bulls, the really experienced males with the biggest heads, the tallest shoulders, and the longest tusks, which is quite a wonderful mechanism, which will hopefully be keeping the genetics for super tuskers alive and well in elephant populations in Africa. Yeah, it's a well rehearsed fallacy in the big game hunting industry that the systematic targeting of very old male elephants, the biggest, oldest bulls, is of no consequence to elephant populations because those bulls are no longer of any use. The hunters would have you believe that those elephants are not favorable for breeding or anything like that, and they're basically just out there waiting to die. All I can say to that is what a lot of absolute nonsense. And we know specifically that those bulls are most valuable in the environment for breeding and sharing of their experience. So yeah, those are the bulls we need to be protecting.
We have an exciting announcement. Wild Earth is launching a YouTube membership program. For a nominal monthly fee, members get an ad-free channel, prioritized questions, early access to videos, and many more perks. You'll get fun features like badges and emojis that'll make you stand out in the chat. YouTube memberships will help us to continue with our mission of connecting people with nature while giving you access to lots of our amazing content.
a couple of impala females, a couple of ewes, also emerging woodland behind the waterhole here at Tembe. Possibly a little bit leaner looking than the individuals we've just been looking at Oldonyo. But conditions are pretty good. Rains have been probably the best in the country along this Cantal section. And they do seem to still be arriving pretty steadily. So yeah, conditions are good, times are good for wildlife of Tembe. Such a pity to see this water cabbage though, absolutely sold here. As mentioned in an earlier show, it is an invasive species from South America, so it doesn't belong here. It's not toxic or anything, so elephants and whatnot can eat, but it's highly fibrous, it's not very nutritious, so most of the wildlife does it, and as it develops, it forms this wheat carpet across the entire surface of the water, blocking out all the sunlight, circulation of oxygen. It's not good. Thankfully, there are some things that can be done to get rid of it, but it is very costly, quite labor intensive, and not possible in these wild places. So hopefully, as time moves in, it gets a big warthog boar, or a big adult male on the other side there, munching away at some nice grass. You can actually see the action of he's got obviously the very prominent set in the upper jaw, the big curvy ones that point at the sky, but he has a much more dangerous, sharper set in the lower jaw that actually rub on the edge of the upper tusks, keeping them razor sharp. Now if this an immature lion, a subadult leopard, cats that haven't really got the experience to tackle something as dangerous as this, that warthog would spin around and could absolutely ruins open. It has been well documented in the Sabi Sand, leopards being found completely dead next to the body of a large dead warthog. Succumbed to injuries inflicted. Now he's no pushover, a danger pig. Warthogs are also one of only 2 members of the Suidae family in Africa, pigs in wild. So in a place like Tembe we get warthogs and something called pig. If you don't know what that is, it's worth a Google. Africa's answer to the wild boar can be found in some parts of North America and certainly the Chile of Europe. Yeah, and equally as formidable, they can be quite dangerous. People are trying to shoot them. Those bush are very rarely seen, nocturnal than these warthogs. I have seen them on occasion in the Greater Kruger. I say on occasion. I've only seen them in the wild in the Greater Kruger once in the last 12 years. But yeah, they're obviously out there. Oh, a bit of a wallow. Oliver has asked a very good question. Will warthogs defend other warthogs being attacked by leopards? Certainly, Oliver, a mother warthog can be a very, very defensive thing when she's got a litter of piglets. So should a leopard come running in there to try and eat one of her little babies, she's by all means going to turn around and try and drive that leopard away. It can be very brave. But a group of adult warthogs, if a predator comes running in there, it's every man for himself. They just run as fast as they can and try and get away. Yeah, thanks for your question there, Oliver. Notice how he's obviously very, very busy in there, but every so often he just stops what he's doing, lifts his head, has a bit of a listen. It would obviously be quite easy for to sneak up on a warthog that is too focused on eating. It's a tough life out there. Absolutely everything is battling for survival, trying to stay out of trouble. And the natural order of things is that the weak or the sort of unobservant are picked off very rapidly by the predators. It can certainly rush, and a lot of people find that quite difficult to stomach, but it is the way it operates, and it has operated without our intervention for millions of years, and it will continue to do so if we protect the greater ecosystem. And these warthogs are widely regarded as one of the most hideous animals on the planet. I don't think they're quite as bad as that, though. Certainly not a pretty thing, but he has at least got lots of character, lots of lumps and bumps and weird long pieces of hair. But he is, at the very least, quite an interesting character to look at. And those warts on his face are not known to serve any definite function, but possibly something to do with mate selection. Now, the males have got 4 warts, with those 2 under the eyes being very, very well developed. If he turns kind of front on to see us, you'll see what I'm talking about. Now, the females have only got 2, but much smaller and just under the eyes. So I don't know, possibly that's also connected to his system of testosterone, a bit like the horns of an impala, and the tail of that straw-tailed wider a little bit earlier. And that could arguably give females an indication of health, virility, and dominance once again.
This is On Safari.
But yeah, it seems that our elephant bulls, that large bachelor group that's been hanging around here for much of the show, has moved off, at least moved out of sight. Their water needs have been met for the day, and now the next driving impulse is to collect some food. But a very tranquil scene nonetheless. Wonderful to be listening to some bird calls, just the sounds of nature. It's also interesting to note these crater-type depressions, kind of between the camera and the main waterhole here. These would have been caused through the activities of elephants in the area, in particular mud wallowing and kind of stirring up earth to chuck backs. But quite fascinatingly, and that is the first step in the formation of a natural pan in an ecosystem where elephants actually survive. So it might start as a simple depression, but gradually as more and more elephants use use it through seasons and over years. It gradually over time is widened and deepened to the point where it actually ends up holding water year round. So as a result, and for many other reasons, elephants are referred to as the gardeners of Eden. And they quite literally have the power to show where it looks. Hello, Darkman Lover. Thank you very much for your kind words. And yeah, nice to have another comment from a familiar wild earth face, a familiar wild earth presence. Yeah, I hope you are well. And it's great to be back here hosting live at the waterhole. So Diane in the UK has asked a very good question. Hello, Diane. She has asked, what is the beautiful tree beside the water? Diane, I reckon that is a Natal mahogany tree. A very, very sort of characteristic tree of this Natal province. KwaZulu-Natal province. Yeah, it's a wonderfully hardwood that keeps its canopy throughout much of the year. A brilliant leopard tree. It's also a very, very good tree to plant in your garden if you do live in a place like South Africa to attract birds. Yeah, an iconic one. Alrighty, I think again in the interest of keeping things flowing, with things becoming a little bit quiet here at Tempe, let's head up to Old Donyo in East Africa to see if anything has changed. So back up in East Africa now, with the sun getting a lot stronger after that little shower of rain we had earlier. And this ground squirrel is out once again, kind of rooting through this old elephant dung in search of seeds. As mentioned in an earlier segment, he is kind of undoing the work of the elephants as seed dispersers. Thankfully, the squirrels simply cannot eat all of the seeds deposited by elephants in their droppings. So no real damage. Quite a nice adaptation for daytime activity on this little ground squirrel. There's those white bands of very pale fur on the upper as well as the lower edge of the eye, which will act as a very good mechanism to draw glare away from those eyes. These little grounds live in colonies, so I'm sure he's not alone, he or she. Does look like it might be a she. Yeah, she's almost certainly got a burrow within, and quite possible that she's got some youngsters on the way, which was a nice round earlier. I wonder if wonderful after some reptile activity, so keeping a close eye on the rocks around the. It would be great to get a view of one of those very colourful Kenyan rock agamas, or perhaps a thirsty snake. I'm particularly passionate about the reptile kingdom. It's an often maligned and, in my opinion, very, very under group of animals. And can be surprisingly interesting. They're actually downright spectacular. Africa is host to some truly, truly wonderful reptile species. Some very colourful lizards, some wonderful snakes, and a whole variety of tortoises, terrapins, and other things. But doesn't look like there's too much else going on for the moment. Again, as mentioned in an earlier segment, with heavy, heavy rains having fallen over much of East Africa in recent weeks, there is a lot of water out in the bush. So the density of animals visiting these waterholes is kind of thinned out a bit. They are getting the water that they need spread out across the entire environment now. Still though, the big impressive things will be coming down here on occasion, just perhaps a little bit less frequently at this time of year. Alrighty, I think in the absence of any big life here at Old Donyo, let's head back once again to Tembe, back down in South Africa. Doesn't look like a whole lot going on here at Tembe either, but obviously that could change at any moment. It's now just past 2:30 in the afternoon, so this is the hottest period of the and with daytime temperatures, this is the time when animals generally come down to the water to have a bit of a drink. It's funny, out on safari, kind of in person, in the flesh in Africa, this kind of midday section is kind of seen as the graveyard shift. And for that reason, most game drives are conducted very early morning for 3 or 4 hours, kind of late afternoon for 3 or 4 hours. But as we've seen so often here at Live at the Waterhole, we can get quite a bit of activity through the hottest hours. We've had sightings of wild dogs, hunting, huskers, lions, leopard, and of course a whole host of lower profile species. Now these warthogs do appear to me, at least for face value at a bit of a distance, to all be males. But we've got a bit of a size discrepancy here. We've got one very large adult male at the back, and then these 3 younger individuals closer to the lens. So yeah, they're certainly not a family, but without a doubt gravitating towards one another for the sake of safety in numbers. It's obviously far more likely to spot an approaching predator if you've got 8 sets of eyes, or 8 eyes, 4 pairs of eyes, rather than a single warthog which is very busy just feeding away. Lots of nice comments coming in. Warthogs, and thanks Dawn, I'm glad you're enjoying them. And Danny has asked, are they dangerous? They certainly can be. And we've got to be extra careful on walking safari to stay away from the entrances to their burrows. I've heard a number of stories of people out in the bush walking in front of a warthog hole that has a warthog within it. And keep in mind, when they exit those holes, they're probably moving at 40 kilometers an hour, something like that. A big male warthog can be a 50 or 60 kilo animal, quite possibly more. So having that bulk hit your legs at that speed would be enough to break bones. Possibly the most dangerous warthogs of all, though, are those that have been captive raised. People occasionally come across orphaned warthogs under certain circumstances and hand rear them. I've come across a couple of them in the lodges that I've worked at. But the problem is when a warthog has lost all its fear for people, they can be very confrontational. It's quite easy to have your legs slashed down to the bone by those self-sharpening tusks in the lower jaw. So yeah, best to give warthogs a bit of a wide berth. Thankfully, though, they're not under any normal circumstances going to seek people out looking for trouble. They're naturally quite afraid of us. It's also quite fascinating. They've got a very well-established hierarchy, which actually seems to be established in their little natal families, the families they're born into, within the first few days of actually being born. So a female warthog only has something like 6 udders, and if she gives birth to 6 piglets, hopefully, the piglet immediately kind of takes its place in the hierarchy by selecting the best udder, and that will be an udder that will defend kind of throughout its development. And the piglet lower king gets the sort of poorest milk producing udder. So yeah, the litter definitely has a bit of a tough time. Also notice how as they're coming out into the open now, these 2 smaller individuals have actually bent their front legs down on their wrists or their knees away there. Now if you look at a warthog and compare it to a pig, they've actually got relatively quite long legs. Certainly a good adaptation when it comes to running away from danger. Better to have longer legs that give good. But those longer legs are a bit of a problem when all of your food is at ground level. So they bend their knees. And quite fascinatingly, they're actually born with thickened skin on that joint, which acts as a bit of a pad to protect.
In two magical African wilderness areas, the Masai Mara in Kenya, the Great Kruger National Park in South Africa, 5 expert safari guides follow a cast of compelling animal characters and the never-ending stories that define their lives.
The Cat Report documents real stories of real predators, as witnessed and captured by a band of obsessive wildlife filmmakers.
Darkmane Lover says, I love warthogs and I think they're cute in their own right. I'm with you, Darkmane Lover. Yeah, perhaps not the prettiest face, they are real characters. This is a seriously big ball with these tusks making almost a complete curl. A seriously formidable animal. As mentioned in an earlier segment, they can also be really formidable when it comes to a predator actually trying to kill one. I had a very, very intense sighting in Olifants West, where Rosie's Pan is, of an adult male leopard out on safari killing a big warthog boar. But the warthog's formidable nature and its tusks, he actually had to chew through the warthog's ribcage to disable its heart. Brutal. Thanks for your question there, Quinton. Quinton has asked whether it's possible to tell if a warthog is a male or a female by their tracks. So, Quinton, if we were looking at like the upper end of the tracks in terms of size, you could probably, with some experience, make a deduction that based on its size, the warthog is a male, based on the size of the tracks. But for anything less than the very, very biggest of footprints, I think it would be very tricky. Females are significantly smaller, probably a third to about 40% smaller than an adult boar. But obviously a sub-adult boar could be the exact same size. So I think it would be quite complicated. your best guess or best bet when it comes to determining the gender of a warthog would be to look under its tail for its genitalia, or to have a look at the warts on the face. So once again, 4 warts with 2 very pronounced ones under the eyes for a boar, for a male. And the females only 2 warts just under the eyes, and much smaller than a boar's. And they live in burrows. They're only active during the day. Obviously need some protection from all of the predators that come out after dark. So they commonly hold aardvark burrows of termite mounds, which they'll kind of extend. They'll make them a bit wider, a bit deeper. They'll make a nice chamber where a whole bunch of them can sleep. And yeah, it is quite a comfortable den for them. Diane, thank you for that comment. I'm happy to hear you've enjoyed some of the finds on live at the waterhole today. Yeah, it's sit things down in the absence of the really big stuff, and focus on those little things. There's lots to talk about. As we approach kind of the final 10 minutes of the program for this afternoon, a big thanks to all of you out there who took the time to tune in and watch, and even better, to send in your questions, comments, thoughts. I will be back with you again same time tomorrow for another installment of Live at the Waterhole. So let's see what we can see. Apologies, it does look like the picture might have momentarily frozen here at Tenby. Possibly something to do with a system of weather moving in off of that east coast. Anyway, back now at Tau Game Lodge, where thankfully there's quite a bit of bird activity. You can certainly see something building up in that sky. Quite a bit of cloud, so hopefully there's a bit of relief for Madikwe horizon. A bit of last minute March rainfall, but really a lifesaver for this place. If it doesn't arrive, it's certainly going to be a very, very tough season for many of Madikwe's grazer species. Certainly seeing some red-knobbed coots. A nice grey heron off on the right. Looks like probably Egyptian geese. They're doing some dipping and some diving there. Now the waterhole here at Tau is artificial, so this is not entirely a natural pan, though it may have begun as a slightly smaller waterhole, as it is artificially provided. It's kind of a little bit of a trade-off, and there is sort of an ethical question around that. Should we be providing water at all? Is a natural system the animals should theoretically be able to manage without us. But keeping in mind, many of these wilderness areas have been significantly reduced in size, and they have to be completely fenced to keep people out, and to some degree to keep the animals inside, to keep them from the areas where people are living or farming or just going about their business. So obviously animals don't have the ability in a lot of cases to make the movements that historically they would have been able to migrate over thousands of miles to find better sources of grazing and of water. So for some of these fenced reserves like Madikwe, times of real trouble has to be provided, and if it gets really bad, occasionally the reserves will even provide like bales of lucerne hay for the grazers. Yeah, it is a balance.
We have an exciting announcement. Wild Earth is launching a YouTube membership program. For a nominal monthly fee, members get an ad-free channel, prioritized questions, early access to videos, and many more perks. You'll get fun features like badges and emojis that'll make you stand out in the chat. YouTube memberships will help us to continue with our mission of connecting people with nature while giving you access to lots of our amazing content.
Some very happy looking Egyptian geese at the back there doing some diving and some splashing around, and they actually look like sub-adult birds, so I'm sure they actually hatched out in a nest somewhere nearby this season at Tau. Yeah, the provision of water, especially in quite a large supply such as this, will attract birds from miles around. And certainly water birds like those red-knobbed coots and the red-billed ducks that we've been seeing on occasion here as well, the white-faced ducks, will be flying hundreds of them. Many water birds actually fly at night over the full moon in search of new sky mates. We reckon probably looking out for the reflection of them on nice clear nights in the shiny surface of bodies of water. yeah, and then kind of magically you get up a natural pan is just full of colourful and varied waters. And our local waterbirds are also believed to be one of the primary kind of transferring influences of fish between hands. So fish eggs inevitably get stuck on the feathers and the feet of waterbirds, which will fly off to a new home and deposit those eggs safely in the water when they arrive. It's probably the most realistic explanation for why a tiny waterhole in the middle of nowhere, not connected to a river, has a population of fish. Yeah, another wonderful example of the interconnected nature and yeah, the highly sensitive functioning of these ecosystems. If we start to remove individual elements from those landscapes, individual species, we gradually weaken the fibers and cause the entire thing to kind of degrade. So long may our wilderness areas be protected. But anyway, as we approach the final minute of the Live at the Waterhole show for today, from our team of directors, Chulu and Tadiwa, as well as myself, naturalist Liam Burrow, all of the greater Wild Earth team behind the scenes making all the magic happen. We'd like to say a very sincere thank you for joining us. And yeah, we hope you hop on board for the Sunset Safari, which will be going ahead shortly. But otherwise, we'll see you back at Live at the Waterhole for more wild scenes, same time tomorrow. But cheers for now.
George, Polly, and I happily greet you this Sunday afternoon for On Safari.